Okay, yesterday's Gemara was just a quick summary. We had a Shaila, two people holding on to a talus. They come in front of us. Um, when they make shuas and they divide it. What happens if one of them would grab it, the other one would be quiet, and consequently he would begin to cry and scream? Do we say his initial response of being quiet is that he's molded that the other person who took it belongs to him, or do we say he anticipated that they would understand that he was waiting for the Chacham to react, and therefore when he began to cry, it's the Goy Milsa that all along that he had problems with it? Okay. The Gemara wanted to know, and they had the Shaila, and there was an incident that took place in a bathhouse in a Mesusa, a bathhouse. While two people were claiming the bathhouse was theirs, two people claiming that the bathhouse was theirs, and one of them went ahead and was Magdashit. That's like talk. He grabbed it. He literally grabbed it. He grabbed it by being Magdashit. And the Chacham Reb Chananya and Rabbi and the other person was screaming. The other person was screaming that how could you do that? And the Reb Chananya and Rabbi they were chayish, and they stayed away from this bathhouse. Anyway, Rabbi was on his way to his Rebbe in Kafi to Rav Chisda. On the way he stopped in Surah, and I guess he was talking and learning with Rav Nuna, and he presented the Shaila, and Rav Nuna wanted to be pushed the Shaila that in fact that it is kodesh because tak for kayin ein moitzi in a samiyadai. That if a kayin there was a suffix bachar, if the kayin would grab it, the din would be and the Yisrael would grab it, the din would be a moitzi mechaber of araya. So we see that if the kayin grabbed it tak for kayin, the other person would be moitzi. So Memela, even if he's like tak for l'chayra, that was he wants to see moitzi ein moitzi in a samiyadai. Rabbi disagreed with Rav Nuna. He said the reason why there it's asa begiza ba'avoida is not because the kohen grabbed it could grab it. It was asa begiza ba'avoida because it was kodesh memela. It was kodesh automatically. It didn't become kodesh as a result. Mashen came the case by the Mesusa, he went ahead and he verbally went ahead and he made it into he verbally went ahead and was so maybe over there it would not be kodesh. So, in fact, then which person? Rab Chananya told Rabbi, I have a raya to you, Einachinami, that talk for Kayin, you would take it away. And what was it? He said the Sveikis go into a corral and they could take off Meiser. Now, if talk for Kayin, Ein Maitzina Samiyadai, how could you be Yaitza using what? Using the suffix, the yomamim of somebody else? And it must be that that it's considered your money, and therefore you can be included in your count. And the Gemara then Bayi wanted to say that that's not really a raya over there, because if in fact it's the case of speaking where there was 9. And there's this the 10th one. So then Abaya could be tak for koyin. And they finally concluded that tak for koyin might see samiyadai. And the reason why, and if this was a suffix, you wouldn't be able to go in to the corral to be counted because we don't count sfeikis. Now, a suffix, only a suffix, only a vadai could be a 10th, but not a suffix. Now, what was the case of sfeikis? These sfeikis that are going into the corral. So we've really finished the sugi of tak v'kayin. We just have to go ahead and tie up a few loose ends. We did the Rashi yesterday, what the sfeikis were. These were all suffer a pitta petach hamar. You had a petach hamar, a donkey, and a male donkey, and it was a suffix whether it was a bechor or not, and you would pay it. And that seh that you redeem in lieu of the bechor is not kodesh. It's automatically, it's chulin, it belongs to the kohen. It belongs to the kohen. And so whether it was a vaday or a suffix, it belongs to the kohen. Okay, so now the Gemara is going to say, what my sveikas? Zayin Amid Aleph, we're up to 3 lines down. Amid Rav Achami Diftil Ravina, my sveikas, those sveikas that go into the crowd to be counted for Maisa Behema, what are they? Ilem is suffix b'chayros. If it's an animal that you're mesupik, whether it's a bechor or not, it says Asiya Yeh Kodesh. The 10th one will be Kodesh, Am Rachmana, Loisha Kvar Kodesh. In other words, if it's a suffix Bechar, then there's a tzad that it might be Kodesh already. But by Maisa Behema, it has to be an animal that's chulin that will be kodesh, that'll become kodesh. So on the suffix that this already is previously kodesh, it doesn't go into the corral. So that can't be the suffix on the discussion. If it's a suffix bechar, it would not go into the corral to be counted, because we need an animal that had no kedusha at all. This one possibly does already, right? Because it was born possibly a bechar, which has its own kedusha. So that's a suffix pidyon petach hamar. It's a suffix pidyon petach hamar. Again, this is a sheep that has been used to redeem a donkey that is questionable whether it was a bechar or not. So, guys, even if for sure it was a donkey, and you went ahead and reported it, it would go in the corral. In other words, it's not kodesh. It's not kodesh. It would go in the corral. Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabbi bar Avua, Yisrael sheyesh le asara suffik petri chamar b'toich pesai. Yisrael that has 10 suffik petri chamar b'toich pesai. Mafresh aleim asara sayayin. You go ahead and separate 10 sheep. U'maisrin behin shaloi, and you take off maisrin, and they belong to him. Now they don't belong. Usually the seh goes to the kohen. Usually it goes to the kohen. But over here, since it's only a suffix, whether we're mechuyev in the first place, it'll be a moitzi mechaverei olav lehevi araya. Right? In other words, if you had guys a vadai chamor, that vadai was a bechar, and you went ahead and you said that this you're being pointed with the sheep would go to the kohen. The sheep would go to the kohen. Over here, right? Over here, it doesn't go to the kohen, because since it's only a suffix, the kohen would have to bring a raya that the chamor was a bechar. Right? So therefore, you would go ahead. The suffix you would take ma'aser behema and you would keep it, and you would even keep it. So that's the case. That ties up the loose end of the quote of Sveikas that we wanted to prove that takva kohen might see some yadai. Okay, that was that loose end. My habilo de mesusa. Here's the other loose end, guys. Right? What's the other loose end? What's the bottom line about this bathhouse? Again, just to reiterate, you had these two people fighting over this bathhouse, questioning what the din was called the olam gavar. Whoever stronger would get it, and the guy was magdashit. The guy's first quiet, then he screams. And what's the din? Is it kodesh or not? So, guys, this will be contingent upon whether what you hold tak for kayin might see sami yadai. If you hold tak for kayin ein might see sami yadai, it will be kodesh. If you would hold tak for kayin might see sami yadai, then it would not be kodesh. So Tashma Adam Rav Chiya bar Ravin, Havi Uvde Bei Rav Chisda. There was an incident in the house of the yeshiva Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda Bei Rav Huna, who Pashta Mechada Am Rav Nachman. Kol Mamin, all money, Shein Yachal Lahoitzi B'Dayanim. Any money that you're not able to take out with dayanim, Hekdeshay Eina Kodesh. If someone's magdashit, it's not Kodesh. Any money that comes to a court you're not able to take out, right? Says Rashi. V'hainami d'chazina lei then yachal yitziyah b'dayanim she'ein lei raya b'davar ein ekdeshay hakadosh. Guys, what was the din of the mesusa? We looked at the Tosfos yesterday. One more time. Let's go back to a Tosfos on Vav Amid Aleph. The bottom Tosfos on Vav Amid Aleph. V'hachad d'chitak for kayin. When he's magdashit, it's like the kohen grabs it. Nira the hachimi boy lebe mesusa. Keeping them a karkihi, since it's karka, have a dina called the olum gavar. Okay, that's the point I wanted. So the din was called the olum gavar. So what's Bezdin saying, guys? Guys, what's Bezdin saying? Two people are fighting over a bathhouse. One says it's mine, one says it's mine. What's the din? Bezdin didn't come to a decision. So what did Bezdin say? Get what to the strong goes the whatever. Fill it in. So in other words, Bezdin gave this is a classic case of something that you couldn't go ahead and be mitzvah dayanim. And what's the din? Hegdesh and a hegdesh. So it must be that tak for koyin is what is mitzvah samiyadai. Is mitzvah samiyadai, and therefore that would be the psak by mesusa. Now, what's the inference? If it was mitzvah dayanim, then what would the din be? Then it would be kodesh. Fred the Gemara. If you would be able to be mitzvah b'dayanim, then the person's act of kedusha would be kaddish. Afagav afke, even if you didn't take it out. So a court case comes, the Dayanim could paskin. It's still in the jurisdiction of the Dayanim. In other words, let's say this Mesusa, guys, was possible for the Dayanim to paskin, and a guy would jump ahead, and he would be magdashit. It would be kaddish. It's a problem. It's not in his rishus. If a person steals something and the owner did not give up hope, if it sounds familiar, we only had it 3 times in Baba Kama. Three people, both of them are not able to be magdish. The Goslin can't do it because it's not his. And the owner, because it's not in his rishus. So the havamin of the Gemara is that this is something that's not in the rishus of the owner. Memela, since it's not in the rishus, the inference of the din makes no sense. If you can't be Metzia b'dayanim, then hegdesh ain't a hegdesh. But if you could be Metzia b'dayanim, then hegdesh good hegdesh. But 1 second, even though you didn't have it physically in your rishus, that's what it's mashma. But 1 second, if it's not physically in your rishus, how can the world can you go ahead and be magdash it? It's ain't a rishusay. So that my answer is mi savis b'mesusa metaltalin. Do you think it's some portable bathhouse? They must have some type of swimming pool, some type of portable mikvah. Askina, we're not dealing with metaltalin that when a person it's not in his rishus. B'mesusa mekarki askinan, right? It was speaking about a bathhouse that is karka. Okay, one of the things we saw and clear in the end of Masechta Baba Kama was karka ein an exeles. Now we spoke out. That doesn't mean physically it doesn't get. We said halachically ein an exeles, guys. Halachically karka can't be stolen. So wherever it is, it's in the rishus of what of the owner. So Mavela is very geschmack. You have a fight over this bathhouse. If one of them, Bezdin would paskin in that person, and that person was magdashit, since karka in an exeles and the mesus is karka, it's considered in the jurisdiction of the person, and he would be able to be magdashit, Okay, so okay, so that basically takes care of the sugya of tak v'koyin. We discussed loose ends yesterday. We went through the sugya, and again, we didn't do the tak v'koyin, but we did the Daf Yomi version of it. Okay, but good. Going back to our first Mishnah, we had 2 people who are oiches, shnaim oichsim betalis, ze oima ani mitzasia v'zeh ani mitzasia, zeh makul shli, zeh makul shli, yeshava shein lepa pachas mechetzia v'yech loiku. Okay, a variation of that din. Hani Rav Tachlifa bar Marava kamei de Ravavo. Rav Tachlifa, who was a son of Marava, meaning he lived in Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is the west of Bavel. Kamei de Ravavohu, shnayim adukim betalis. 2 people are aduk betalis. Zen noitel ad mokem shiyade magas. This person takes to the amount where his hand reaches. Zen noitel ad mokem shiyade magas. And this person takes until places reaches. The hashar cholkim b'shava, and the rest they divide. And machvi le'rab abahu u'bishvua. Let's see Taisus for a second. Third Taisus down. Machi rav abahu v'hashar b'shvua. Machi means he showed. He went like this, right? Near loy garsin and v'hashar. We don't say the left, the rest. It's mashma guys. Whatever they're holding on, they're not swearing. So let's say you have, let's say it's 150 parts. Each person's holding on to 50. And now you have 50 under discussion. The girsa that we have would apparently mean, and they swear on the remaining 50. But on what they're holding, they don't swear. Says Taisvis, near the loy garsin and v'hashar. We're not goyris the rest. The af mashabi yodei megasi shava. Because they swear even what they're holding. Why? Even in the takna shvua, like Rabbi Yochanan, shlei adam hoilich v'toichif mitamzeh yishava, af mashu toifis. Good. In other words, what's the reason for the shvua? Good. So it's a deterrent to go ahead and grab onto something. So you're telling me now the whole reason for the shvu is I shouldn't do this, and now you're telling me you don't swear on this. So it says Tosfos, when it says that this guy keeps this guy keeps this, and the middle over here they'll divide, but it's with a shvua on the whole thing. If that's what Tosfos points out, it's a shvua on the whole thing. Now, I had pointed this out to you when we did the Mishnah, and a second time I told you 2 times. Our Mishnah is going to be speaking our Mishnah that clearly says that whatever it's not speaking in a case where you're holding on to what you're holding on to, as we're going to see in a second. So Amrav, Elamasis and the Tani, the Palgi Bahadadi, V'loy Ketani Zed not al Makam Shiyadim Agas, Hechim Mishkachasla. Our Mishnah says you divide it. Our Mishnah says you divide it, and it doesn't say each person gets what they're holding on to. So, no, guys, watch. According to the Bryce we have now, I don't know, on this hand, you only get what's under my fingers. This hand, you get much more. Correct? That's the Brysa. Whatever they're holding on to. So the assumption, we assume that they're holding equal amounts. Let's say this guy's holding this, and this guy's holding this. Right? So this one, this hand is going to get much more, yes? But our Mishnah didn't say that. What did our Mishnah say? You divide it down the middle, right? That's so therefore the implication is that the Brysa and the Mishnah are not on the same page. But it's always difficult to say that. So says Rav Papa, Rav Papa, the Tafsi Bikarkashta. Our Mishnah is speaking where they're holding on to the fringes of the talus, the strings of the talus. Shnayim oichsim b'talus that you pictured in your mind is not what you pictured in your mind. It's not this, it's this. Since each one is not really holding onto the talus itself, only onto the borders or the strings of the talus, therefore you're dividing it up. But einachinami, if this one was holding this and this was holding this, you wouldn't divide it equally. You wouldn't divide it equally. Now, beautiful diak is the lashon of the Brisa versus the lashon of the Mishnah. Shnayim oichsim b'talis. What's oichsim mean? Okay, they're holding on to. Shnayim adukim. The Brisa is the lashon adukim. Adukim is mashma they're aduk. They're stuck. It's mashma. You have a much stronger grasp on it. So the lashon, even the lashon of the Brisa versus the Mishnah would go ahead and imply that the Mishnah there's less of a physical attachment versus the Brisa, which is more because it says the lashon of adukim, shnayim adukim betalis. Guys, geschmack. It's very geschmack. Now, again, I think the hezbollah is beautiful. If you're holding on to this, you're holding on to this. It's like a moitzi michaveiroi on what you're holding on to. So therefore, it makes sense that what you're holding on to should be yours. It makes sense what you're holding on to should be yours. But what's underneath you should be yours. That would make a lot of sense. Because I'm holding on to that. Okay. Continues the Gemara. Elamasisin diktani de pagi badadi. Our Mishnah says that the dividing v'loy ketani zen noitel ad makam shiyad magas heichim mishkachasla. What's it speaking about? Amar Papa says, Papa the tefisi bikar kashta. They're holding on to the fringes. Amra Meshashia Shmamina, we hear from the fact that since each one is getting what the hand Achiyoda Magas, to what the hand is holding on to. Shmamina Hai Sudra, this Sudar, keeping the toughest. Okay, let me beforehand. One of probably the most common kinyan in the world is the kinyan chalipin. When you got married, they by the Tanoim, they made you take off the yarmulke or lift up a pen because you were going ahead and you were going ahead. There's a koina and a makna. The koina, the one who's acquiring, gives a kli, he gives something, and the makna then goes ahead and accepts it. And in lieu of that, the makna is something else. It's called a kinyan chalipin. It's or a kinyan sudar. Okay, that's basically it's a barter transition that takes place very simultaneously. So The kona, the one acquiring, gives the makna, the one giving over a kli, and then the makna makes a kinyan in that kli, and then whatever the sale takes place. That's called the kinyan chalipin. We learn it out from Boaz and Rus. We learn it out from Boaz and Rus of all places, and the lashon of the pasuk is it's in Perik Dalid. It's in Rus Dalid. Perik is pasuk Zayin. Zois lifnim b'Yisrael ala geula ala tamura. That you go ahead and a person, a goyel or a switch, lekayim kol davar, that each matter should be mekuyim, that it should be a kinyan, is sholef ish na'loy, a person would take off his shoe. According to Rav Reisman, it's not a shoe, it'd be an odd thing to take off a shoe. He says it's some type of a glove type of thing. When he give it to his friend, bezos chatu to be Yisrael. So this is the kinyan chalipin. So now, given that you're telling me now that when whatever you're holding on to is yours, whatever's holding on to is yours. So, high sudra, this sudar that you're using for a kinyan chalipin, you're using some type of handkerchief. Kivin the toughest, once the meicher grabs onto it, how much? Shalosh al shalosh. That's 3 etzbois by 3 etzbois. Remember our Hebrew rule? That's 3 etzbois by 3 etzbois, which is the minimal shear for a patch to be makabel tuma. An ani, we've had this many times. An ani would go. Recently had it that an ani would go ahead and stealing that amount that has a chashivas to it, because less than that is not considered a kli, but that is. And if once he holds on to that area of 3 etzbois with 3 etzbois, Karinam Bey will call it v'nasan l'reyehu. We'll consider it that what v'nasan he gave it over already. So if I would go ahead and I have 3 etzbois but 3 etzbois, and I'm the meicher, and somebody's giving it to me. Once he gives this to me, even if he's still holding on to it, once I have 3 fingers, that's considered an asina already, and therefore keeping the toughest. If I'm holding on to an area that's chashiv, the deal is done, even if the kona did not go ahead and remove his hands yet from this kli, in this case, this sudar. That's the chiddush over here. The command the pasuk dummy. We'll view it as if it's cut off already. We'll view it as if what? Since what I'm holding on to, guys, is mine, we'll consider the kona holding on to here as if it's cut off already, and therefore whatever I have, it's like I have the whole kli in my hand, and thus the kinyan chalipin is complete. Is complete, despite the fact it's holding on to it. And this is extrapolated by the fact that whatever you're holding on to is considered yours. So once I'm holding on to 3 by 3 etzbois, I've kind of the kli, and memela, the transition of the chalipin that I'm being makna to him transpires. Now, says the Gemara, if that's the case, what's this case of chalipin where he's still attached to it and it's considered a good nesina? Why is it different than Rav Chisda? Rav Chisda, get biyada, if you give a woman a get, u'mashicha biyada, and connected to the get is a string. As we say, it's not a case of no strings attached. I'm sorry. Where's the himself's not here? It's too bad. Maybe Dr. Pesher could take his place. Okay. Anyway, so you have this, if you give over a get and there's a string attached, 1 second. If she's holding on to the whole get, are you divorced? No, but 1 second. If you're telling me it's an asina, even if you connected to something, why is she not divorced? So let's say that, so we want to say that Rav Chisda, this is different than Rav Chisda's then. Rav Chisda, get biyada, she has the get totally in her hand. U'mashicha biyada, when the string attached to the get is in his hand, im yachal l'natgoy, if he's able to pull it, u'leviu etzlo, and to bring it to him, she's not divorced. But if you can't pull it, then she is divorced. So l'chayra, 1 second, if you're telling me whatever you're holding on to is considered yours, if she's holding on to a full get, then why is she not divorced? Even if you could pull it, right? So Hasam creases being in. It's a didn't get. It's not felt in the scene. It's a good nesina. It's not a good get. A get, it's not enough to give it. It has to be chasav law. Sefer creases for nasabiyada. It's got to be sefer creases, and since you're holding on to it, it's not the creases. It doesn't cut off the relationship. The leka. Hachan asina beinin over here by chalipin. We needed a sina the ikar, and there is. Okay? Amarava, Imhoisa Talis Misuheves. If this talus had some type of gold on it, a Rebbe Shatalis, it had some gold on it, then Cholkin, they divide it. It says in a Shita, of course they divide it. Why shouldn't they divide it? Like Tzricha Dekoi Dahava Be Mitzuyai. It's in the middle. Says the Gemara, Hanami Pshita that to divide it. Like Tzricha, the Mekar of Lagabe Dechad. In other words, I'm holding on to a talus, and in the talus there's a piece of gold. Okay, this is the gold, and we're equidistant over here. So this clearly, I make believe that I'm not make believe this is the gold and it's not connected. So you might think, since it's closer to this person's proximity, when we divide the talus, even though we're not dividing it literally, he gets it, as we'll see. Kamash Malon, that you divide. Okay, Kamash Malon, that you divide. Let's the Makar guy the So Ma'adutem, I would have said the Amalei, Polig Hachi. This guy would say, let's divide over here. Kamash Malon, that what? No, we don't divide that way. We divide this way, right? We divide this way, and each person's going to get the gold. Now we're physically not dividing it, because we're going to see we're selling it. We're selling it. The Gemara is going to ask, if it's a physical division, what are you going to do with a talus that you cut in half, right? What are you going to do with that? The Gemara is going to say, give it to Katanim. Okay, but Chalapakas. It means monetarily you're going to divide it. It says, so the Amalei Polag Hachi, Kamashma, Amalei, my chos is the Palagda Hachi. Why do you say you divide it vertically? You can go Polag Hachi, divide it horizontally. Okay, so that was the case of two people holding on to our Mishnah, two people holding on to the fringes of a talus. The Bryce is speaking to people holding on to the etzem talus itself. And now we're going to have two people who are holding on to a shtar, a malva and a loiva. And each one's claiming that it's theirs. The loiva is claiming it's mine and I paid it up. The malva is claiming that it's still viable and you owe me money. And they're both holding on to it. Okay. We're going to have a brisa that appears to be understandable, and then it's not going to be understandable, and you're going to do a total switch, a whole total 180 on what the brisa is saying. Tarabanan. Shnayim adukim b'shtar. Milvo shalihu v'naful mimeni. If it's mine, and he still owes me the money, and it fell from me, umatzasiv, and he found it. The loiva amar shalchahu. The loiva admits that what? That it's the malvis. However, I paid it up. They paid you up. Okay? What's the din? So there is no question that there was a halva. He's not saying it never took place. There was a halva. He's saying it took place. This is an important fact. He's agreeing that it took place, but he's saying that he paid it up. So Yiskayim ashtar b'chaysamav. So what's the divrei Rebbe? It says Rebbe, we go ahead. The malva goes. He goes to Bezdin. He goes ahead and he ascertains that the Eidim written on the shtar are what? Are Kasha v'Yasha. And in the Havamina right now, guys, remember it's the Havamina, and the Havamina right now, and then the Malva would collect the whole thing. So two people holding on to a shtar. Malva says, I never got paid. The Loiva admits there was alva, but I paid up. What's the din, says Rebbe? Be mekayim the shtar b'chaysamav, and again, the Havamina, and then the Malva will collect. Rabbi Shimon no, yechlaiku. He says what? Yechlaiku. Okay. Now, the second part of the brisa. So the first part is where the Malva and the Loiva are holding a shtar and they're disagreeing. Second part, nafuli adayin. Now here's the Havamina, and if it was picked up in the street by a dayan, la yotzi alamis, he keeps it. Rabbi Yossi Omer on that din, harihu b'cheskasai, you give it to the Malva. Okay, so two dinim. The din of two people holding on to it. The din if a dayan picks it up. The Gemara is going to ask, and what happens if a regular Joe picks it up? What might not mean if a dayan picks it up, right? And machlokes between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi. Tanakama says le'yotzi alamis, says Rabbi Yossi, what harihu b'cheskaso, you can give it to the Malva. Amamar, going back over the brisa again. This is what I meant. The brisa is obscure. Now going back over the brisa. Amamar. Guys, what was the Havamina? The Gavi le Malva Kula, and the Malva is going to collect everything. So, meaning, we're totally doing away with the tfisa of the loiva. Two people come to court. a malva and a loiva. They're both holding on to the star. Shtayim adukim, adukim. They're not holding on to fringes. They're holding on to the star. Says Rabbi that what? Yiskayim b'chaysamav, the malva, and then what? He's going to collect the whole thing, the malva? What about the tfisa of the loiva? He's holding on to something. For Leslie Masnisan, and this brisa does not hold on Mishnah Shnaimaks and Batalis, Zoim Anim Mitzia, Zevanim Mitzia, right? And Yechloiku. So how can you say outright that the malva collects everything? Amarav Rav Nachman, that's not pshat. Bim Makayim, if the star is Mekuyim, Divrei Kol Yechloiku. If the star is Mekuyim, and if guys, since it's Mekuyim, it lends itself and that what it's authentic, and the Levi says it took place. It's not a counterfeit. It's Mekuyim. Yechlaikum. Ki pligi. When's the machlekes Rabbi and Reb Shimon Gamliel? B'she'enim Mekuyim. When the star is not Mekuyim, it wasn't authenticated. So two people holding onto an unauthenticated b'shtar. What do? Rabbi Sava moida b'shtar shekasvu. If you once he's moida that the star is written, sarach l'kaimai. You have to be mekayim it. But once you mekayim it, then yachloiku. But not that once you mekayim it, the malva will accept everything. If it's not mekuyim, you're not going to collect anything. If it's mekuyim, then you'll divide it. So in order for the malva to get his half, he's got to go ahead and say, he's got to go ahead and be Mekayim the star. Okay? The Mekayim lay, Polig. Guys, you hear the difference. We just went off the Havamina. If you Mekayim lay, and if you Mekayim, Polig, then you'll have Yechlaiku. Not like you thought that the malva is going to collect everything. You Mekuyim, then you'll divide it. The Eloi Mekayim lay, Loi Polig, right? If you're not Mekayim, then you're not gonna divide it, right? Why not? Because this is a Pesha Asa, Pesha Hitta. Who made the star? The Leiva made the star. He agreed to it. But again, if you're not Mekuyim, you're not. My timer, Chasva Ba'almahu. This, if you have an unauthenticated star, you can't collect with it. What gives this star credibility? Man kamashri leila haishtara. Who is the one that makes the star something? Leiva. It's the Leiva. The Priya. He said it's paid up. So let's go. Rebbe Shita, guys. Going back over the Brisa. Two people holding onto a star. The Malva says it's mine. The Leiva says, I agree it's yours, but I paid up. If it's an authenticated star, in order for the malva to get half, he has to authenticate it. And if he doesn't authenticate it, he gets nothing. Why? Because this star, you can't collect from this star. Since it's unauthenticated. The malva said there was a loan. You're right. The malva said that there's a loan and the star is true, but in the same sentence, what did he say? I paid up. That's the ksubis, guys. Hapesha asa, hu hapesha hitir. The pair that went ahead and asked it is the pair that mated it, right? This is one of the sugis there in ksubis in the beginning there. So very geschmack. So now you're getting a little clarity in what Rabbi says. Now, what about Rav Shimon? Rav Shimon Lazar says yechloiku. What does he say? Rav Shimon Gamliel Savar Moide b'shtar shekasvu. He's moide by a star that was kasvu. Ain't sarf l'kaimai. You don't have to. Once it's written, we don't have to mekayim it. The afal kadlei mekayim leyechloiku. And even though it's not mekuyim leyechloiku, what about pesh asar? That's a gemara in ksubis. Okay, so it comes out that the din of shnayim adukim b'shtar and shnayim and betalis is the same din. It's a din in yechloiku. The question is the machloikus between Rebbe and Rav Shimon Gamliel is whether you have to be mekayim the star or not. Fellas, there is no din of hamoitzim echavero of a raya over here. There is no din of that. The malva will substantiate and take the whole thing. At most, the malva will get half. At worst, he'll get nothing. Like Rav Shimon Gamliel, he'll always get half. Why? Because you don't have to be mekayim a star, and therefore, there it is. Yachlaiku. Says Rabbi, it depends. If it's not authenticated, in order for the Malva to get anything, he better authenticate it. And if he does, he'll get half. If he doesn't authenticate it, he'll get nothing. Because you have a pesha asa, pesha hitter of the loiva who said, yeah, I did. It is a shtar, but guess what? I paid it up. Okay, that's the now that took care of the first part of the brisa. The latter part of the brisa said what? And if it falls into the hands of a dayan, then we have machlokes between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi, where the Tanakama says it never leaves, and Rabbi Yossi says it's what you give it to the malvin. It's a meitzah mechaveri. It's in its chazaka. Now, the havamina of the Gemara is, guys, that you have a shtar, and it fell in the ground, and a dayan picked it up. Now, why would this profession impact whatsoever what the halacha is of the shtar? It could be that any yukal could have picked up the shtar, right? Says the Gemara. So now, nafal liyadayin. Now we're going to explain the second clause of the brisa. Nafal liyadayin lo yotzia lamis. That's where it stays. Amid base. Lo yotzia lamis. Now mashno liyadayin. What's the difference? The hands of the dayan. That what says Rashi meish acher. Again. What's the havamina, guys? The havamina is that the dayan picked it up. So Amar Rava, that's not what happened. Hachi Kamar. Hachi Kamar means, okay, here's Azoi Daf Zogan. Here's what's going on over here. Hachi Kamar. The Acher, someone who's not the Malva, and someone who's not the Loiva. The Acher, another person, not the Malva, not the Loiva. Shemotza Shtar, Shenafel Liyadayin, who found the shtar that had been in the hands of a dayan, and the dayan had written an authentication on it. What's called a henpeck. He'd write in the henpeck on it, right? But the hechidami, the kasabei henpeck, la yotzi alamis, then it stays there forever. Then it stays there forever. Says Rashi. Hachi kamar, va'achar, she'ena loy loivav loy malva, she'motza shtar shenafel kvar liyad hadayin, what do you mean it fell into the hands of the dayan? Of the person who picked it up. So in a case where they're not holding on to it, in a case where it falls into a third party's hands, and there was a henpick on it, then you don't go ahead and return it whatsoever. And certainly if there's no henpick on it, you don't return it, guys. Madach, an authenticated shtar, you don't return. Certainly a non-authenticated shtar, you don't return. And that's what the Gemara continues and says now. Let me boy like kosaba henpick, and you don't need to tell me that you don't give it back to the malva, the loiva, if there was no authentication. That if there's no henpick on it, then you must have written the shtar, but the loan never took place. Even if there was a henpick, the mekuyim. And what would I think, guys? Why would a person go through the trouble of authenticating the shtar if not for the fact that the loan took place and he wants to go ahead and support his claim? Fellas, if you have a shtar that's been authenticated by Dayanim, I would think that is very powerful evidence that the Malva still has a viable transaction, a viable claim here. Why in the world would he go to the trouble of having the shtar authenticated if the loan never took place? Good. So now, afilu kasabay hempik lo yachzer the chashin lepiroyin, because with chayish that what it was what that he paid up. So even though the hempik says that the loan took place, we still, if it falls from the hands of it gets in the hands of another party, and the guy said I paid up, we're going to be chayish that he did. Rabbi Yossi Amri Hariu b'cheskasai, right? It's in its chazaka, meaning you're going to give it back to the malva. It's still a viable shtar. Lo chashin lepiroyin, and we're not chayish for piroyin. Rashi says a very, very good reason. Fellas, if you pay up a debt, what do you do with that shtar? right, at the same time, you rip it up, right? So the fact that it's still around lends credibility that in fact what? That he didn't pay it up. So you have a shtar with a henpick and a shtar with a claim from a malva that it was not paid. The loiva says it was paid. We have a taina. Says Rabbi Yossi, that's still a viable star because you should have gone ahead and paid it up. So now it comes out that this is the din. This is the kamaisa. This is the brisa. Nafali adayin, meaning if it had been in the hands of a dayan and a henpick had been written on it and it was picked up by somebody else, La Yotzi Alamis says the Tanakama, it stays by that person. Unless Adam come along, it's going to stay by that person until Eliyahu comes. Rabbi Yossi says, Harihu b'cheskaso, it's in its chazaka, that who can collect from it? The Malva can collect from it, okay? The Gemara now is going to ask a few questions. We'll get back to this chart in a minute. The Gemara now is we're going to tangentially go off to understand the Shita of Rabbi Yossi and the Chachamim. So from what we just saw now, the Chachamim clearly are what? They're chayish that it wasn't paid up, as they said. And Rabbi Yossi says we're not chayish shinan because he would have ripped it up. That's get it down again. Says the Chachamim, the star stays where it is in the hands of the guy who found it. Because we're chayish that it was paid up. Says Rabbi Yossi, no, it goes to the malva. Because we're not chayish and pay up. Good? Now the Gemara is going to question that. Ready? Guys, we're going to question that. What's the question? Let's see. Is Rabbi Yossi not chayish for what? For a star being paid up? But Tanya, what's a star ksuba b'shuk? If you find a star ksuba b'shuk, again, a ksuba is a document of a debt that's owed. The woman being the malva and the husband being the loiva. Correct? You just switch those around, yeah? The woman to collect is the malva, and the husband to give is the loiva. He's the borrower. Bisman she'abal moida, if the bal is moida that's not paid up, yachsa leisha. Ein abal moida lo yachsa, lo lezeh v'lo lezeh. So clearly, what are we chayish? Right? You don't know. So we're chayish that maybe was paid up. Rabbi Yossi Amar, oida tachas baila, as long as she's still living with her husband, yachsa leisha. Then the woman gets it back. This almalo in this garsha lo yachser lo lezeh v'lo lezeh. And what does it mean? If she gets widowed or divorced, then she can't collect from the estate. But 1 second, if Rabbi Yossi is not chayish for paroyin, guys, why can't she collect from the estate? Why can't she collect from the estate? If Rabbi Yossi, guys, Rabbi Yossi is not chayish the paroyin. The Tanakama is chayish the paroyin. Therefore, it stays lo yotzi alamis. Right? This is the din that we got from the Kamaisa. Yeah. Now, what does it say by this? If you find the ksuba, matzah ksuba, then we said Rabbi Yossi Omer nis almlo nis garsha lo yachser lo lezeh lo lezeh. Now, what does it mean? Both the Tanakama says lo yachser lo lezeh lo lezeh. Rabbi Yossi says it. So both the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi hold what? Chayshin and leproyan. When you're not returning it, can you see this? Should I make it bigger? Is that better? That's better? Both the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi are chayish the paroyin because you're not returning it loy lezeh v'loy lezeh. So we have a problem now. Rabbi Yossi to Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says loy chashin leparoyin, and here he says chashin leparoyin. The Chachamim are good because they in both cases they're chayish leparoyin. But you have a problem with Rabbi Yossi. Fred the Gemara, Rabbi Yossi is not chayish leparoyin. We see by ksuba when you don't return it loy lezeh v'loy lezeh that you're chayish leparoyin. Back in the Gemara. Epuch, says the Gemara, Epuch, Nafali Adayin, La Yotzi Allah, Mr. Reb Yossi. Okay, we're going to switch around. Why are we switching around? We're switching around this. The Reb Yossi says Chayshinon, and the Chacham say Loy Chashinon. Just switch this around. Right? So now, what do we have? It's good. Reb Yossi says Chayish the Peroyin over here. He says Chayish the Peroyin over here because we're putting Rabbi Yossi over here. But what did you just do, guys? What did the Chacham say over here? Now you're putting the Chacham in that Loy Chashinon. So you just created in the Chachamim the same problem you had with Rabbi Yossi. You just recreated the problem. Over here, they're saying we're not chayish, and over here, they're be chayish. Fred the Gemara says, Ihachi, if you're telling me you're switching around, the Chachamim say, Loi chashinon, kasha de rabbanon ad rabbanon. Shtar ksuba. Okay, guys, here's the kasha. You just switch this around. The kind of comment says, Loi chashinon. So now he says chashinon over here by ksuba. So you know what the answer is going to be? Really, you switched it around. And all of this is according to Rabbi Yossi. Take out the word Tanakama over here. Just put in Rabbi Yossi over here. Since you switched Rabbi Yossi over here, chashinon, it works out. That there's not two opinions over here, a Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi. There's only Rabbi Yossi. So the Tanakama Taka holds Loi chashinon l'peroyin, and therefore you give it back to the Malva. And Rabbi Yossi holds no, chashinon l'peroyin, and you won't give it back, Lo Yotzi alamis. And over here also by ksuba Lo Yotzi. And he's the only one that's discussing ksuba. Let's see it inside. It says, more shtak ksuba kul Rabbi Yossi, v'chsuri mechsura. It's missing words. V'chi ktani. Eina bal moida, if the bal is not moida that he paid up, lo yachser, you don't return it, lo yilazeh, lo yilazeh. B'medav amamurim, shenes al maloi niskarsha. Aval oida tachas baila, if she's still underneath the husband's jurisdiction, yachser leisha. Why? She Reb Yossi oimer, oida tachas baila, yachas leisha. This al maloi niskarsha, or lo yachser, lo yilazeh, lo yilazeh. So the only one who was speaking in this brisa was Reb Yossi. So guys, you don't have a steer anymore. Guys, look at the chart. Initially, the steer was Rabbi Yossi says chashinon, and here he says loy chashinon. Switch it around. Here he says chashinon, here he says chashinon. Tanakama here says loy, and here he says yes. Over here, there is no Tanakama. It's all Rabbi Yossi. So here he says loy, and there's no stira. Okay, that's one way to answer it. Next way to answer it. Okay, Eipah Chamaisa was the problem with the Rabbanon. We answered that already. Okay, now, Rav Papa is going to give the following teretz. Don't switch around the first one. Rabbi Yossi is just saying to the Chachamim, don't switch around the first one. Over here, Rabbi Yossi, who says over here, Loi chashin lepiroyin, and you could pay up. Over here, Rabbi Yossi was talking to the Chachamim. He doesn't hold chashinon, he holds Loi chashinon. And he's saying, at least admit to me over here that you're not chayish. Let's see it inside. Don't switch around anything. And the Chachamim hold chashinon, and Rabbi Yossi holds loy chashinon. And I have a kashim ksuba. Rabbi Yossi l'devreim d'Rabbanan kamalahu. Right. When the brisa by ksuba, Rabbi Yossi was telling the Chachamim according to your opinion. Lididi, who holds loy chashinon, afil nis almo nis garsha, nami loy chashinon l'peroyin. Very good. I'm consistent. Lididchu, but you who are chayish l'peroyin, oidelamia ba'oide tachas baila, that as long as the husband's alive, the yachsel isha, the labas peroyin he, that you return to an isha, because at this time, if they're still living together, she was not a bas peroyin. You usually collect ksuba one of two ways, either by death or by divorce. If she's still living by her husband and it falls down, there's no svara to say that about that it was paid up. And therefore, the words of the Chachamim, I'll say imit srari atfasa. Maybe what we're worried about, maybe the husband gave her a little peckle of gelt, and she had that on the side, and she collected from there. So therefore, I'm not moided to you. So according to that, teretz guys is geschmack. Don't switch it around. The Rabbi Yossi is loy chashinon, and also over here he's loy chashinon. Take him out over here. He's saying the Rabbi Yossi is addressing the Tanakama. According to me, I would give it to the woman because I'm not chayish. But according to you, who is chayish over here, admit to me over here, you're not chayish. Or else, because as long as she's by her husband, what are you worried about? And the Chacham said, you know what we're worried about? That maybe she has a little packet on the side that she's collected from. Ravina Omar, we have another teretz, guys. Okay, so that's this teretz. Ravina's teretz, there's no problem with, you're going to switch it around. You're going to switch around the first one, and you're not going to have a problem, guys. You're going to switch around over here. You're going to switch around over here. Here the Chacham will say loy, and that they say chashinon over here is a special din by ksuba. So by regular a malva loiva they hold loy chashinon, but by ksuba they hold chashinon. Ravina malaylam epach kamaisa. Switch around the first one. The time of the rabbanon hacha mishum the chashinon l'shtei ksubis. Yechayish for two ksubis, and therefore even even if she has one falls out, you're chayish, there is another one. You're chayish for two ksubas. Okay. Rashi. Lo'ilam epich kamaisa, go up a little bit. You're switching around, and the Chacham say loy chashinon. So Baksuba is different, right? Why? The time of the Rabbanim Baksuba lav mishum dechashin piroyin. We don't think it was paid up. That's not the reason that you don't give it back to her. The man de para va'hadalei shtar la'al tekara. You rip it up. El mishum dechashin l'shtei ksubas. Shema chaza, maybe perhaps he returned because the ksuba acheres shniya la'achas shenafla. This one fell. The woman said, "I lost the ksuba," and he wrote a second one, right? Miyada. The Eina Bal Moida. It says the Baal's not Moida. Lav Ba'oime Parati. Not that he's not Moida that he paid up. Al Ba'oime Al Tafsula. Don't return it to her. Sheyesh Biyada Acheres. So when it says the Eina Bal Moida, it means that Baal was his Moida that this is the only Ksuba. Maybe I wrote her another one. Okay. So now the time Rabbanach Mishnah Chashin L'Shtei Ksubas. Rabbi Yossi L'Shtei Ksubas L'Chashinim. Okay. So let's summarize. Okay. Let's summarize. We had a case by Malva V'Loiva. It fell down. It fell into the hands of another person that had a handpick on it, and certainly if it didn't have a handpick on it, Lo Yotzi Alamis, it doesn't leave. It stays by the person who found it. Rabbi Yossi says what? It goes back to the Malva. Obviously, why do you see? The Tanakama says, why does it stay by him? Because we're chayish, that was paid up. Rabbi Yossi says, return it to the Malva is not chayish. We have a problem by Ksuba. By Ksuba, the Chacham say that don't return it, and Rabbi Yossi says don't return it. So you see they're both chashinon. So now we have a problem in Rabbi Yossi. We have three ways of dealing with the problem. The first way, switch around. Switch around. Rabbi Yossi says chashinon, and now he's consistent over here, right? He's consistent over here. And the Chachomim, now you have a problem because you made a problem with the Chachomim. So we're saying that what? This whole thing was according to Rabbi Yossi. There is no Chachomim, right? This all is the words of Rabbi Yossi. That's one answer. A second answer, loy tepach, don't switch it around. The Rabbi Yossi holds loy chashinon, and over here, why chashinon over here? Because he's just addressing the chachamim. I hold loy chashinon, but according to you, who are chashinon, at least admit when she's still married to the husband that loy chashinon. And finally, we have Ravina saying epach kamaisa, switch it around. I'm going to switch it around. You have a problem then. So Rabbi Yossi works out, but the chacham don't work out. And the answer is the reason is not because the chacham are not chayish the paroyim by ksuba, but chayish for a second ksuba that she lost it, and now she claimed she lost it, and he wrote another one, and therefore we don't let her have it. And the chacham say what? And Rabbi Yossi says we're not chayish for two ksubas. Okay, that's the chart of the day. Okay, I guess it's a little late. I guess we'll stop.
Okay.